The detention cell aboard the Krillian dreadnought Void's Edge was cold and sterile, designed to break the spirit of any prisoner unfortunate enough to find themselves within its metal walls. The Empire had perfected the art of psychological warfare over centuries, using fear and isolation as weapons just as deadly as their plasma cannons. The center of the cell sat a small figure that seemed almost laughable to the guards who occasionally peered through the reinforced viewport. A human child no more than 12 standard years old, with tangled brown hair and clothes torn from her recent capture on the mining colony of Kepler 438b. Her name was Luna Reeves, though she had given the Krillians nothing more than sullen silence since her arrest 3 days ago. Commander Zixith clicked his mandibles in amusement as he studied the daily reports. The child had been found hiding in the ruins of Settlement 7 after the Empire's pacification of the rebellious human colony. Most of the adults had fought to the death, their stubborn refusal to surrender typical of their species. But this one small survivor represented something the Empire could use, an example of human weakness to broadcast across their controlled territories. Such a pitiful creature, Zixith mused to his aide. Sub-Commander Grelik. Look how she cowers in the corner. No fight left in her at all. The humans like to boast about their warrior spirit, but here we see the truth. They break just like any other species. The Krillian Empire had been expanding across the galaxy for over 2,000 years, conquering system after system with their superior technology and ruthless tactics. They were insectoid beings, standing nearly 8 feet tall with chitinous exoskeletons that could deflect small arms fire. Their 4 arms allowed them to operate complex weaponry with deadly efficiency, and their compound eyes could track multiple targets simultaneously. Humans, by comparison, were soft-skinned mammals that the Empire had encountered only 50 years ago. Initially dismissed as primitive and weak, humanity had proven surprisingly resilient in their scattered colonies throughout the Outer Rim. But resistance was futile against the Empire's might, and one by one human settlements fell. Luna sat in her cell, knees drawn up to her chest, appearing every bit the frightened child the Krillians believed her to be. But behind her seemingly vacant stare, her mind was active, cataloging every detail of her surroundings. The guard rotations changed every 6 hours. The cell door operated on a magnetic lock system. The ventilation shaft in the upper right corner was too small for an adult, but might accommodate someone her size. She had learned early in life that people underestimated quiet children. Adults saw what they wanted to see: weakness, compliance, helplessness. They never noticed the way she memorized patrol patterns or how she could slip through spaces that should have been too small. They certainly never suspected that a 12-year-old girl might be planning an escape from one of the most secure vessels in the Krillian fleet. The child's capture had been pure bad luck. She had been foraging for supplies in the ruins when a patrol squad discovered her footprints in the ash-covered ground. Rather than fight, she had allowed herself to be taken, knowing that a frontal assault would be suicide. Better to appear harmless and wait for an opportunity. Now, as she sat in her cell aboard the dreadnought, Luna thought about her mother's final words to her before the attack on Settlement 7 began. Remember, little star, sometimes the smallest light can guide lost ships home. Your strength isn't in your muscles or your voice. It's in your mind and your heart. Never let them take that from you. The Krillians had no idea what they had captured. To them, she was just another human child, probably traumatized and broken by the loss of her colony. They saw her small frame and assumed weakness. They heard her silence and believed it was fear. They were wrong on both counts. Sub-Commander Grelik approached the cell, his forearms clasped behind his back in the formal posture of imperial authority. "Human child," he chittered in heavily accented standard. "You will be brought before Commander Zixith tomorrow for interrogation. If you cooperate and provide information about other human settlements, your death will be quick. If you resist, it will be educational for our troops." Luna looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes that seemed to hold nothing but terror. She said nothing, which only confirmed Grelik's assessment of human weakness. The sub-commander turned away, satisfied that this particular prisoner would pose no problems. But as he walked away, Luna allowed herself the smallest of smiles. Let them think her weak. Let them believe their own propaganda about human fragility. She had been raised by someone who had taught her that perception was just another tool to be used. and that the greatest weapon was often the one your enemy never saw coming. The ventilation shaft called to her, but not yet. Timing would be everything. She needed to learn more about the ship's layout, about the crew rotations, about where they might be keeping other prisoners. Most importantly, she needed to find out exactly where they were taking her, because Luna Reeves was not just any human child. She carried more than just her mother's teachings with her. She carried a legacy that would shake the very foundations of the Krillian Empire, if they were foolish enough to give her the chance to use it. For now, though, she would continue to play the role of a frightened, helpless little girl. It was, after all, the perfect disguise. The interrogation chamber was designed to intimidate. Harsh lighting cast sharp shadows across the metal walls, while various torture devices lined the perimeter like silent sentinels waiting for their turn to inflict pain. Commander Zixith stood behind a raised platform, his imposing figure casting a long shadow over the small chair where Luna had been secured with energy restraints. "Begin recording," Zixith commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber's speakers. "Interrogation of human prisoner designation HC-7749. Captured from Settlement 7, Kepler 438b. Subject appears to be a juvenile female, approximately 12 standard years of age." Luna sat perfectly still in the chair, her head down and shoulders slumped in apparent defeat. The energy restraints around her wrists and ankles glowed blue, designed to deliver painful shocks if she struggled. To the Krillians watching, she looked exactly like what they expected, a broken child, overwhelmed by the Empire's power. "Look at me, human," Zixith commanded, stepping down from his platform to tower over her small form. When she didn't respond immediately, he activated a mild shock through the restraints. Luna's body jerked and she raised her head slowly, tears gathering in her eyes. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know anything. I'm just a kid." Grelick chittered in amusement from his position by the door. "Commander, perhaps we should simply terminate this one and move on. She appears to be mentally damaged from the trauma. We're unlikely to gain useful intelligence from such a young specimen." But Zixith raised one of his 4 hands for silence. In his years of interrogating humans, he had learned to recognize their tells. Something about this child's posture, the way she held her head, triggered his predatory instincts. "No, Sub-Commander. There is more to this one than meets the eye. I can sense it." The commander activated a holographic display showing images of the destroyed settlement. "Tell me about the other survivors, child. We know there were escape pods launched before our final assault. Where were they heading?" Luna stared at the images of her destroyed home, and for a moment, genuine pain flashed across her features. Settlement 7 had been more than just a colony. It had been a community of families who had carved out a life on the edge of civilized space. Now it was nothing but ruins and ash. "I don't know about any escape pods," she said quietly. "I was hiding in the basement when everything started burning. When I came out, everyone was gone." Zixith leaned closer, his compound eyes studying her face for signs of deception. "Your parents, child. What were their names? What were their occupations? Surely a human offspring would know such basic information." "My dad was Marcus," Luna said, her voice strengthening slightly. "He worked in the mining operations. My mom—" She hesitated as if the words were difficult to speak. "My mom died when I was little. Dad never liked to talk about her." The commander's mandibles clicked in frustration. Dead parents meant no leverage, no pressure points to exploit. But something about the way she mentioned her mother piqued his interest. There was a subtle change in her posture, a slight stiffening that his enhanced senses detected. "What was your mother's name?" he pressed. Luna's head came up sharply, and for just an instant Zixith saw something flicker in her eyes that was definitely not fear. Then the moment passed, and she was just a frightened child again. "Sarah," she whispered. Her name was Sarah. But even as she spoke, Luna was analyzing her situation with a clarity that would have surprised her captors. The energy restraints were standard Imperial issue, designed primarily for larger, stronger species. The voltage was calibrated for adult humans, not children. She had been testing the current flow since they secured her, building up a tolerance by tensing and relaxing her muscles in rhythm with the energy pulses. More importantly, she had been studying the room's layout. The interrogation chamber had 3 exits: the main door where Grelick stood guard, an emergency hatch in the ceiling, and what appeared to be a maintenance access panel behind Zixith's platform. The panel was partially obscured, but she could see the telltale signs of a manual override system. Sarah is a common human designation, Zixith mused, beginning to pace around her chair. But surnames, child. Humans always use family designations. What was your mother's full name? This was dangerous territory. Luna had hoped to avoid this question entirely, but the commander was more perceptive than she had given him credit for. She had to make a choice: continue the deception and risk him becoming suspicious, or give him part of the truth and hope it wouldn't mean anything to him. I don't remember her last name, she said finally. Dad said she came from one of the core worlds before they moved to the Rim. He said she was trying to escape something, but he never told me what. It wasn't entirely a lie. Her mother had indeed been running from something when she met Luna's father on the frontier colony of New Geneva. But the full truth was far more complicated than this traumatized child was pretending to know. Zixith stopped pacing, his head tilting in a gesture that indicated deep thought. Escape from the core worlds to the outer rim. That suggests political exile or criminal flight. Perhaps your mother was a member of the Terran resistance before the Empire's expansion into human space. Luna's heart rate spiked, but she forced herself to maintain the facade of ignorance. I don't know what that means. Please, can I have some water? I'm really thirsty. The commander studied her for a long moment, then gestured to a nearby guard. Bring the prisoner water. We will continue this discussion after a rest period. He turned back to Luna, his compound eyes reflecting the harsh lighting. Do not mistake my patience for weakness, child. I will learn what you know one way or another. As the guards prepared to escort her back to her cell, Luna allowed herself to appear relieved by the temporary reprieve. But inside her mind was racing with calculations and possibilities. The interrogation had given her valuable information about the ship's security protocols and the commander's psychological profile. More concerning was his line of questioning about her mother. If he started investigating Sarah's background seriously, it would only be a matter of time before he discovered the truth. And when that happened, Luna's charade of helplessness would become impossible to maintain. She needed to accelerate her timeline. Whatever she was going to do, it had to happen soon, before the Krillians realized exactly who they had captured. The research department of the Void's Edge hummed with activity as data technicians worked through the night cycle, processing intelligence gathered from the destroyed human settlement. Commander Zixith had issued specific orders to investigate any records related to the captured child, particularly focusing on her mother's background. Tech specialist Vorthak's primary eyes focused on his holographic displays, while his secondary eyes monitored incoming data streams. The Krillian's forearms moved with practiced efficiency across multiple input devices, cross-referencing names and genetic markers against the Empire's vast intelligence database. Commander, Vorthak's voice crackled through the communication system. I have found something unusual in the settlement records. The human child's father, Marcus Reeves, filed official documentation when they arrived at Settlement 7 12 years ago. According to the refugee registration forms, he was seeking asylum with his infant daughter after fleeing from New Geneva. Zixith's mandibles clicked with interest. New Geneva was one of the first human colonies to fall under Imperial control. What was he fleeing from? The records indicate he was leaving due to personal safety concerns following the death of his spouse. There is a death certificate attached to the file, Commander. The mother's name was Sarah Chen Reeves. The name meant nothing to Zixith initially, but something about it triggered a memory subroutine in his enhanced consciousness. Chen Reeves. Run that designation through our military intelligence archives, particularly anything related to human resistance activities during the initial conquest. Phases. What happened next would be remembered by every Krillian present as the moment. Their routine prisoner processing became something far more significant. Vorthak's primary eyes went wide as data flooded his screens, and several of his auxiliary arms froze mid-motion. Commander, the technician's voice held a note of what could only be described as fear. I have multiple hits on that designation. Sarah Chen Reeves, also known by the codename Ghost of New Geneva. She was the architect of the Terran Defense Network, the human who designed the quantum encryption protocols that delayed our conquest of the core worlds by 18 months. The command center fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Every Krillian present knew that name, though few had expected to encounter it again. The Ghost of New Geneva had been responsible for some of the Empire's most costly military setbacks during the early phases of human conquest. "Continue," Zixith commanded, his voice barely containing his growing excitement. She was also the tactical coordinator for the evacuation of civilian populations from 12 human colonies ahead of Imperial advances, estimated to have saved over 2 million human lives through her early warning systems and escape route protocols. She was marked as Priority Alpha for capture or elimination, but disappeared from intelligence tracking 7 years before the fall of New Geneva. Sub-Commander Grelick had arrived in the command center during the briefing, drawn by the unusual level of activity. "Commander, surely this is impossible. That human warrior died years ago during the siege of the inner colonies. Our records confirm her ship was destroyed attempting to break through our blockade." "No," Vorthok corrected, his voice trembling slightly. "The records show her ship was destroyed, but her body was never recovered. It was always listed as presumed dead rather than confirmed elimination. According to this data, she apparently survived, made it to the Outer Rim, and lived under an assumed identity until her natural death 8 years ago." The implications hit everyone in the room simultaneously. If the child was truly the daughter of Sarah Chen Reeves, then they were not dealing with a random refugee orphan. They had captured the offspring of one of humanity's greatest military minds. "What else do we know about the mother's death?" Zixith demanded. "Medical records from Settlement 7 indicate she died from complications following a genetic illness." "But Commander," Vorthok hesitated before continuing, "there are encrypted files attached to her medical records. Files that use quantum encryption signatures matching those developed by the Ghost of New Geneva herself." Zixith felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. "Can you decrypt them?" "Not with standard Imperial systems. The encryption is too advanced, and it appears to be specifically designed to resist our decryption protocols." "But Commander, there is something else. The child's genetic profile shows markers for enhanced cognitive processing and accelerated learning capabilities. These are not natural human traits. Genetic modification," Grelick realized. "The humans were experimenting with enhancement technologies during the war. If the Ghost of New Geneva had access to those programs, then her daughter would be far more than a typical human child," Zixith finished. His compound eyes turned toward the detention level where Luna sat in her cell. "How long has the child been aboard our vessel?" 4 days, Commander." 4 days. Zixith began calculating rapidly. 4 days to observe our security protocols, study our crew rotations, and analyze our ship's systems. If she truly is the daughter of Sarah Chen Reeves, then every moment she remains on this ship increases the threat level exponentially. The commander's realization came too late. Even as they spoke, Luna was already moving through the ventilation system of the detention level, having finally completed her analysis of the ship's internal structure. The energy restraints that had held her lay in her cell, their quantum locks bypassed using techniques her mother had taught her through encrypted training programs, hidden in what appeared to be children's games. "Commander!" The urgent voice of the detention supervisor crackled through the communication system. "Prisoner HC-7749 has escaped containment. Cell appears intact, no signs of forced entry, but the subject is gone." Zixith felt his warrior's blood surge through his system. This was no longer about interrogating a traumatized child. They were now hunting the daughter of one of the Empire's most dangerous enemies, a human who had inherited both genetic enhancements and tactical training that made her potentially more dangerous than an entire squad of adult human soldiers. "Lock down the ship immediately," he commanded. "All sections, all levels. Deploy hunter teams to every deck. Find that child before she reaches any critical systems." But even as the alarm klaxons began to wail throughout the void's edge, Zixith suspected they were already too late. The Ghost of New Geneva had trained her daughter well, and now that training was about to be put to the ultimate test aboard one of the Empire's most powerful warships. In the depths of the ship, Luna moved through the shadows with purpose, her mother's final lessons echoing in her mind. The time for hiding was over. The Krillians had made a fatal error in underestimating her, and now they were about to learn why the Empire had feared Sarah Chen Reeves, and why they should fear her daughter even more. Luna moved through the service tunnels of the void's edge with fluid grace, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to navigate the cramped spaces in complete darkness. The genetic modifications her mother had undergone during the war, improvements to reaction time, cognitive processing, and sensory perception, had been passed down to her daughter through careful genetic therapy. What the Krillians saw as a simple human child was actually a product of humanity's most advanced biotechnology. As she crawled through the ventilation system toward the ship's central computer core, Luna's mind drifted to her mother's final months on Settlement 7. Sarah Chen Reeves had known her genetic illness would eventually claim her life, but she had used every remaining day to prepare her daughter for a hostile galaxy. "Remember, little star," her mother had whispered during one of their evening training sessions disguised as bedtime stories. "The Empire believes they understand humans because they've conquered our colonies. But they only see our weaknesses, never our potential. They think in terms of physical strength and overwhelming firepower. They cannot comprehend the power of a human mind that refuses to accept defeat." Those lessons had included more than just tactical thinking. Sarah had taught Luna advanced computer programming, quantum encryption theory, and most importantly, how to think like a ghost. "Invisibility isn't about hiding," she had explained. "It's about becoming something your enemy cannot recognize as a threat until it's far too late." Now, as Luna reached a junction in the ventilation system that would allow access to the ship's primary data network, she put those lessons into practice. Her enhanced hearing picked up the sound of Krillian search teams moving through the corridors below, their chittering voices filled with growing frustration as they found no trace of their escaped prisoner. "Expand the search to sections 12 through 18, came Commander Zixith's voice through the ship's communication system. "Deploy additional teams to the engine room and weapons control. If she attempts to sabotage critical systems, I want her intercepted immediately." Luna smiled in the darkness. "Let them search the obvious targets." Her mother had taught her that the most effective strikes came not from destroying what your enemy expected you to destroy, but from turning their own systems against them. The computer core wasn't her target. It was her pathway to something far more valuable. She carefully removed the ventilation grating and dropped silently into a maintenance corridor that housed the ship's primary data conduits. The Krillian Empire's technology was impressive but predictable, following standardized designs across their entire fleet. Sarah Chen Reeves had spent years studying those designs during her time as a resistance leader, and she had passed that knowledge to her daughter through encrypted files disguised as educational games. Luna's fingers moved across an access panel with practiced confidence, her enhanced cognitive processing allowing her to rapidly decode the Krillian security protocols. Within minutes, she had established a connection to the ship's internal network. But she wasn't interested in the technical data most intruders would seek. Instead, she was looking for something far more precious: the ship's communication logs and command records. The Void's Edge wasn't just any Imperial vessel. It was the flagship of the 47th Conquest Fleet, responsible for the systematic elimination of human resistance in the Outer Rim territories. Their records would contain the locations of other human survivors, planned attack coordinates, and most importantly, intelligence about remaining resistance cells that her mother's old network might have missed. As the data flooded into the portable storage device she had constructed from components salvaged during her 4 days in detention, Luna felt a surge of satisfaction. The Krillians had inadvertently given her access to the most comprehensive intelligence archive in their entire sector fleet. But her satisfaction was short-lived. Her enhanced hearing detected the approach of a patrol team, much closer than she had anticipated. The searchers had apparently expanded their sweep pattern to include the maintenance areas, showing more tactical intelligence than she had expected from the Empire's typically rigid command structure. "Check every access panel." Sub-Commander Grelick's voice echoed through the corridor. "The human child is small enough to use spaces our normal prisoners cannot access. Leave no potential hiding place unexplored." Luna quickly disconnected her device and began moving toward an emergency access ladder that would take her deeper into the ship's infrastructure. But as she reached for the ladder, her enhanced senses detected something that made her freeze in place. The approaching patrol team wasn't just searching randomly. They were following a specific search pattern that seemed designed to herd her toward particular areas of the ship. Either they had suddenly become much more intelligent about small space searches, or they had help from someone who understood how her enhanced abilities would influence her movement choices. The realization hit her like a cold shock. "They know about the genetic modifications," she whispered to herself. "They've analyzed my capabilities and they're predicting my behavior." This changed everything. If the Krillians understood her enhanced abilities, Then they would also understand the tactical advantages those abilities provided. They would be expecting her to attempt sabotage, escape, or intelligence gathering. What they wouldn't expect was for her to do something that appeared completely suicidal. Luna's hand moved to a secondary device she had constructed, this one designed for a very different purpose than data gathering. Her mother had taught her that sometimes the only way to win an unwinnable situation was to change the fundamental nature of the conflict itself. "Computer," she whispered, accessing the ship's voice command system through a maintenance terminal. "Display current navigation status and destination coordinates." The holographic display that materialized in front of her confirmed what she had suspected. The Void's Edge wasn't heading toward an Imperial staging ground or military installation. They were traveling toward the coordinates of Haven Station, one of the last known independent human settlements in the sector. The Krillians weren't just holding her for interrogation. They were using her as bait, hoping that her escape would lead them to other human survivors or resistance cells. They expected her to attempt to send a warning to Haven Station, which would reveal the station's communication frequencies and confirm its location for their fleet. But Luna had learned more from her mother than just tactics and technology. She had learned that the greatest strength of the human spirit was its refusal to accept that any situation was truly hopeless. As the Krillian search teams closed in on her position, Luna activated her improvised device and smiled. Let them think they understood human nature. Let them believe they had anticipated every possible response from the daughter of Sarah Chen Reeves. They were about to discover that some legacies were impossible to contain, and that the ghost of New Geneva had taught her daughter lessons that went far beyond anything in their tactical databases. The real demonstration of human potential was about to begin, and the Krillian Empire was about to learn why they should have killed her immediately instead of trying to use her as a weapon against her own people. The hunt aboard the Void's Edge was about to become something far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. The device Luna activated was unlike anything the Krillian Empire had encountered before. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense, nor was it designed for sabotage or escape. Instead, it was something her mother had called a perception scrambler, a sophisticated piece of technology that exploited a fundamental weakness in Krillian neural architecture. Sarah Chen Reeves had discovered during her years fighting the Empire that the Krillians' compound eyes, while excellent for tracking multiple targets, relied on specific electromagnetic frequencies to process visual information. By generating carefully modulated interference patterns, it was possible to create a kind of sensory confusion that made tracking a single target nearly impossible. As the device hummed to life, Luna felt the familiar surge of enhanced awareness that came with her genetic modifications. Time seemed to slow around her as her accelerated cognitive processing kicked into full gear. She could hear the individual footsteps of each member of the approaching search team, could track their positions through the vibrations in the ship's hull, could even smell the distinctive pheromones that Krillians released when they were experiencing heightened alertness. "Target located in Maintenance Sector 7. Grelik's voice crackled through the searcher's communication devices. "Converge on that position immediately. Use stunning weapons only. The commander wants this prisoner taken alive." Luna moved with fluid precision through the maze of conduits and access tunnels, her small size allowing her to navigate spaces that would challenge even the most agile adult. But more than her physical advantages, it was her mental capabilities that truly set her apart. Where a normal human child might panic or make desperate, random choices, Luna was analyzing dozens of variables simultaneously, calculating probability matrices that would have challenged a military tactical computer. The Krillian search teams found themselves chasing shadows. Every time they thought they had cornered her, Luna would vanish through an access panel they hadn't noticed or slip past them through spaces that seemed too small for any living creature to navigate. The perception scrambler made it nearly impossible for their enhanced senses to lock onto her position, while her intimate knowledge of Imperial ship design allowed her to stay several steps ahead of their search patterns. But Luna wasn't just running. With each movement through the ship's infrastructure, she was leaving behind small modifications to critical systems. Nothing dramatic enough to trigger immediate alarms, but subtle alterations that would begin to cascade through the ship's network like a digital infection. Her mother had taught her that the most effective form of warfare was the Kind your enemy didn't recognize until it was too late. Never fight strength with strength, little star, Sarah had whispered during one of their training sessions. Fight intelligence with intelligence and watch your enemies defeat themselves. In the main command center, Commander Zixith was beginning to realize that his hunter teams were facing something far beyond a simple escaped prisoner. The child was moving through their ship with a level of tactical sophistication that suggested advanced training, but more disturbing were the reports coming in from his technical teams. Commander, Tech Specialist Vorthak reported, his voice tight with concern. We're detecting anomalous activity in 17 different ship systems. Navigation, communications, environmental controls, even auxiliary power distribution. The changes are subtle, but they appear to be interconnected. Sabotage? Sixth demanded. Not exactly, sir. It's more like optimization. Someone is making our systems more efficient, but in ways that create subtle dependencies between previously independent networks. I've never seen anything like it. Zixth's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed this information. The child is not attempting to destroy our ship. She is attempting to control it. The realization was terrifying in its implications. If the daughter of Sarah Chen Reeves had inherited her mother's talent for systems integration and tactical thinking, then she wasn't trapped aboard their vessel. She was claiming it. Meanwhile, in the depths of the ship, Luna had reached her primary objective. The central quantum processing core that managed the Void's Edge's primary functions was housed in a chamber designed to be accessible only to senior engineering staff. The multiple security protocols, biometric scanners, and encryption barriers would have stopped any normal intruder. But Luna wasn't normal, and her mother had spent years teaching her to think beyond conventional limitations. The quantum encryption protocols that protected Imperial systems were based on mathematical principles that assumed normal human cognitive processing speeds. They had never been tested against a mind that could perform calculations at nearly computer-level speeds while maintaining the intuitive leaps that made human thinking so unpredictable. Luna's fingers danced across the control interfaces, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to input commands faster than the security systems could process them. To an observer, it would have looked like she was simply playing with the controls, but each apparently random input was part of a complex sequence, designed to exploit timing vulnerabilities in the system's architecture. Access granted, the ship's computer announced in its neutral synthetic voice. Welcome, Chief Systems Engineer Korthaval. Luna smiled. Her mother had taught her that every security system had backdoors, and that those backdoors were usually hidden in the most obvious places. The chief engineer's access codes were stored in the system's emergency protocols, designed to allow rapid access during critical situations. All she had needed to do was convince the computer that such a critical situation existed. Now, with full access to the ship's primary systems, Luna began implementing the final phase of her plan. It wasn't about escape, though escape would be a pleasant side effect. It wasn't about revenge, though the thought of turning Imperial technology against the Empire held a certain appeal. This was about something far more important than personal survival or tactical victory. Luna was about to send a message that would reach every human settlement in the sector, a message that would tell them exactly where the Imperial fleet was positioned and how to avoid their attack routes. More importantly, she was going to transmit her mother's final gift to humanity, the complete technical specifications for the perception scramblers and quantum encryption protocols that could level the playing field between human resistance fighters and Imperial forces. But first, she had one more lesson to teach the Krillians about underestimating human potential. Computer, she said quietly, display complete tactical information for all Imperial fleet movements in this sector. The holographic display that materialized around her showed the positions of over 200 Imperial vessels, their planned assault routes, target priorities, and estimated arrival times at human settlements throughout the Outer Rim. It was a complete strategic overview of the Empire's campaign to eliminate human resistance. Luna connected her storage device and began downloading everything. Every ship position, every communication frequency, every tactical plan that the Empire had developed for their final push against human independence. Her mother had spent her life fighting to save human lives, one colony at a time. Her daughter was about to save them all at once. As the download completed, Luna heard the sound of Krillian forces finally breaching the secured chamber behind her. She turned to face Commander Zixith as he entered. flanked by a full squad of heavily armed warriors. "Surrender, human child," he commanded, his weapons trained on her small form. "You have nowhere left to run." Luna looked up at him with eyes that no longer held any pretense of fear or innocence. They were the eyes of Sarah Chen Reeves, intelligent, determined, and absolutely unafraid. "You're right, Commander," she said calmly. "I'm not running anymore." Commander Zixith stared down at the small human figure surrounded by holographic displays of classified Imperial intelligence, and for the first time in his military career, he felt genuine uncertainty. The child's posture had changed completely from the cowering prisoner he had interrogated just hours ago. Luna Reeves stood with the confident bearing of someone who held all the advantages, despite being outnumbered 20-1 by heavily armed Krillian warriors. "You will step away from the control console immediately," Zixth commanded, though something in the child's calm demeanor made his words sound less authoritative than he intended. "Any attempt to damage Imperial property will result in immediate termination." Luna tilted her head slightly, a gesture that reminded Zixith uncomfortably of the tactical recordings he had studied of her mother during the war. "Damage? Commander, I think you misunderstand what's happening here. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just redistributing information that was being kept from its rightful owners." Subcommander Grelick stepped forward, his forearms holding targeting devices that painted Luna with multiple laser sights. "The human child speaks in riddles, Commander. Perhaps we should simply stun her and sort out the damage afterward." "I wouldn't recommend that," Luna said conversationally. "You see, I've made some modifications to your ship systems while I've been playing in your computer networks. Stunning me right now would be problematic." Zixith felt his warrior instincts screaming warnings. What modifications? Luna's smile was eerily similar to the one Sarah Chen Reeves had worn in surveillance footage, taken just before she destroyed an entire Imperial supply depot. "Well, for starters, I've connected your weapons control system to your life support networks. Any aggressive action against me will automatically trigger a cascade failure that will vent atmosphere from approximately 60% of your ship's sections. Your crew has about 18 minutes of emergency air after that happens." The Krillian warriors exchanged uncertain glances. Grelick's targeting devices wavered as he processed this information. "Commander, she's bluffing. A human child couldn't possibly understand our systems well enough to implement such modifications." "Are you willing to bet the lives of 3,000 crew members on that assumption, Subcommander?" Luna asked pleasantly. "Because I learned systems integration from someone who once turned an entire Imperial battle cruiser into a very expensive projectile using nothing but creative programming and a deep understanding of quantum cascade reactions." Zixith's compound eyes studied the holographic displays surrounding the child. The technical information flowing across the screens was far beyond what any normal human should be able to comprehend, let alone manipulate. But if this truly was the daughter of the ghost of New Geneva, then normal assumptions about human capabilities no longer applied. "What do you want?" he asked, lowering his weapon slightly. "That's a much better question," Luna replied. "What I want is very simple. I want you to understand exactly who you've been chasing through your ship for the past several hours, and I want you to carry a message back to your empire." She gestured to the tactical displays around her, and the holographic projections shifted to show real-time Imperial fleet positions throughout the sector. "This information is already being transmitted to every human settlement within 300 light-years. Your surprise attacks, your coordinated strikes, your carefully planned final assault on human resistance, all of it is now known to your targets." Zixith felt his exoskeleton go cold. "That intelligence is classified at the highest levels. Even if you could access it, our quantum encryption protocols would prevent any unauthorized transmission." "Your mother's quantum encryption protocols," Luna corrected gently. "The same protocols my mother designed during the war, then improved during her years on the Outer Rim. You've been using security systems created by Sarah Chen Reeves for the past decade, never knowing that she had left herself backdoor access to all of them." The implications hit the commander like a physical blow. The Empire's entire communications network, their strategic planning systems, their fleet coordination protocols, all of them had been built on technology originally developed by their greatest enemy. And now her daughter had turned those systems against them with an elegance that was both terrifying and brilliant. "But that's not the message I want you to carry to your empire," Luna continued. "The real message is much simpler than that. She stepped back from the control console and spread her arms wide, encompassing the entire chamber with its displays of Imperial tactical information. You see, Commander, your empire has been operating under a fundamental misunderstanding about human nature. You've conquered our colonies, destroyed our cities, and scattered our people across the galaxy. And every time you've done this, you've assumed that you were witnessing the limits of human capability. The child's voice grew stronger, carrying an authority that seemed to fill the entire chamber. But the truth is, you've never actually fought humanity at our best. You've only fought us when we were desperate, scattered, and reacting to your attacks. You've never faced what happens when humans have time to plan, time to prepare, and time to remember what we're really capable of when we work together. Zixith realized that the tactical displays around them had changed again. Now they showed something that made his blood freeze in his veins. The positions of human ships and settlements that the Empire had believed were completely eliminated. Dozens of communities that Imperial records listed as destroyed were not only intact but actively coordinating with each other. My mother spent her final years building something your intelligence. Networks never detected, Luna explained. A communication network that connects every human settlement from the core worlds to the outer rim. A network that shares technology, coordinates resources, and most importantly, ensures that the knowledge and capabilities of humanity's best and brightest are never lost when individual colonies fall. The holographic displays now showed the true scope of human survival and coordination. Where Imperial intelligence had seen scattered refugees and isolated resistance cells, the reality was a connected network of settlements that had been secretly sharing resources and information for years. The ghost of New Geneva didn't die fighting your empire, Commander. She died building something that would outlast your conquest and ensure that humanity would eventually reclaim everything you've taken from us. Luna's hand moved to a final control interface, and Zixith realized that everything that had happened, the escape, the chase, the infiltration of their systems, had been preparation for this single moment. And now, Luna said quietly, it's time for you to learn what happens when the children of humanity's greatest heroes decide to stop hiding and start fighting back. The control interface glowed as Luna activated the final sequence her mother had programmed years ago. Across the galaxy and every human settlement connected to the secret network, dormant protocols began awakening. Technologies that had been hidden, defensive systems that had been carefully positioned, and most importantly, human minds that had been preparing for this day for over a decade. The daughter of Sarah Chen Reeves smiled as she looked up at the stunned Krillian warriors surrounding her. Message delivered, Commander. I hope your empire is ready for what comes next. The bridge of the Void's Edge descended into chaos as reports flooded in from across the sector. Communications officer. Thelnick's forearms moved frantically across his control stations as he tried to process the overwhelming cascade of emergency transmissions from Imperial vessels throughout the fleet. Commander, Thelnick's voice cracked with strain, I'm receiving priority alpha alerts from the entire 47th Fleet. Ships are reporting simultaneous communication failures, navigation system malfunctions, and weapon targeting errors. It's as if every Imperial vessel in the sector is experiencing coordinated technical sabotage. Commander Zixith stood in the quantum processing chamber. His weapon still trained on Luna Reeves, but his attention was divided between the small human child and the reports streaming through his communication implant. The scope of what was happening was beyond anything the Empire had experienced since the early days of human resistance fleet. Admiral Korthvin is demanding immediate status reports. From all command vessels, Thelnick continued, the Domination has lost primary weapons control. The Iron Talon is reporting that their navigation systems are showing false star charts. Commander, 17 ships have already broken formation because they can no longer trust their sensor readings. Luna remained perfectly calm in the center of the chamber, surrounded by holographic displays that continued to show the expanding wave of coordinated human response across the galaxy. You can lower your weapons, Commander, she said quietly. Even if you kill me now, it won't stop what's already been set in motion. But Zixith was beginning to understand that the child's death was the least of his concerns. Through the tactical network, he could see the broader picture of what Sarah Chen Reeves had built during her years of supposed death. The Human Resistance Network wasn't just sharing information. It was implementing a coordinated technological assault on Imperial infrastructure that had been years in the planning. How? He demanded. How did your mother infiltrate our system so completely? Our security protocols are updated constantly. Our encryption methods are reviewed by the Empire's best technical minds. Luna tilted her head with that same unsettling gesture that reminded him of her mother. You're still thinking about this wrong, Commander. My mother didn't infiltrate your systems. She designed them. Every communication protocol, every navigation algorithm, every targeting system your Empire has developed over the past 10 years. All of it was built on foundational technologies that came from human research programs during the war. The implications were staggering. The Krillian Empire had conquered human space so thoroughly that they had adopted human technology wholesale, never realizing that the very systems they depended on contained hidden vulnerabilities placed there by their greatest enemy. The quantum encryption protocols you use for fleet communications, originally developed by my mother for the Terran Defense Network. The navigation algorithms that allow your ships to coordinate massive fleet movements, based on research she published under a false identity 3 years after her supposed death. Even the tactical analysis software you used to plan attacks on human settlements was written by programmers working from specifications she provided through intermediaries. Zix felt the foundation of his understanding crumble. The Empire's technical superiority over human forces was always an illusion, Luna finished. You were fighting a war using weapons designed by the very person you were trying to defeat. And every system you adopted made you more vulnerable to the countermeasures she was developing. The holographic displays around them shifted again, now showing the results of the coordinated human response that Luna had triggered. Across the galaxy, Imperial installations were experiencing simultaneous failures. Supply depots found their inventory systems corrupted, showing empty warehouses where crucial resources were stored. Military academies discovered that their training simulations had been subtly modified, teaching Imperial officers tactics that contained fatal flaws. Communication networks that had carried Imperial orders for years began broadcasting human resistance messages instead. But the most devastating effect was psychological. For the first time since the beginning of their galactic expansion, the Krillian Empire was experiencing the feeling of being outmaneuvered by a supposedly inferior species. The human child standing in their most secure chamber had demonstrated capabilities that challenged every assumption about human limitations. The message I want you to carry to your Empire is simple, Luna said, her voice carrying the same quiet authority that had made Sarah Chen Reeves such a formidable opponent. Humanity is not the primitive species you conquered 50 years ago. We learn, we adapt, and we remember. Every defeat teaches us lessons about your weaknesses. Every victory shows us how to exploit your overconfidence. She gestured to the displays around them, which now showed something that made Zixith's compound eyes widen in shock. The hidden human settlements weren't just coordinating defensive measures. They were launching a counterattack. Ships that Imperial intelligence had believed destroyed were emerging from concealment throughout the sector. Weapons platforms that had been carefully positioned over years of careful planning were coming online simultaneously. This isn't revenge, Commander. This is evolution. While your Empire spent 50 years believing you had eliminated human military capability, we spent 50 years becoming something you were never prepared to face. Luna walked slowly to a communication interface and placed her small hand on the control surface. Computer, open a fleet-wide channel on all Imperial frequencies. Channel open, the ship's AI responded, unaware that it was following the commands of the Empire's most wanted fugitive. Luna's voice, clear and strong despite her age, echoed through every Imperial vessel in the sector. This is Luna Reeves, daughter of Sarah Chen Reeves, speaking to the forces of the Krillian Empire. You came to our colonies believing you were hunting scattered refugees. You captured me thinking I was a helpless child. You were wrong about both. Through the fleet communication network, thousands of Imperial warriors heard the voice of a 12-year-old human girl who had single-handedly compromised their entire tactical position. Your Empire rules through fear and superior technology. But technology is just knowledge applied with purpose, and humans have always been very good at learning. The communication channel carried her words to every corner of Imperial space, but more importantly, it carried them to human settlements that had been waiting years for this signal. Across the galaxy, communities that had lived in hiding began revealing themselves. Technologies that had been carefully concealed were brought online. And most significantly, humans who had spent decades preparing for this moment began to demonstrate what their species was truly capable of when they had time to plan their response. Luna closed the communication channel and turned back to face Commander Zixth. You have a choice now, Commander. You can continue trying to fight a war against an enemy you never understood, or you can be the one who helps your empire learn to coexist with a species that refuses to be conquered. Zixith looked at the tactical displays showing the sudden emergence of human forces throughout the sector, then at the small child who had orchestrated it all. For the first time in his military career, he was facing an opponent who had outmaneuvered him so completely that resistance seemed pointless. What happens now? He asked. Luna smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like what she was, a 12-year-old girl who had just accomplished something extraordinary. Now? Now humanity stops hiding and starts building. My mother saved us from extinction, Commander. I'm going to help us reclaim our future. The daughter of the ghost of New Geneva had delivered her message to the galaxy. The age of human resistance was over. The age of human resurgence had begun.